The project began much as any project would for a typical commercial photographer. Miami-based J. Brian King and his assistant arrived at the beach early one morning to start shooting for a self-promotional piece that King had been formulating in his mind for several months. But that was where the typical aspects of the shoot began to disappear, only to be replaced by the not-so-typical inclusion of computers, digital information, and electronic sizing and coloration. King's poster, 5 different exposures combined into one image that existed only in his head, was assembled with the use of an amazing new graphics tool, a machine called the Sitex, which can create just about anything the photographer can visualize using original photography as its starting point.
You may be going through a magazine and you'll see this ad, and you'll say, well, gee, how is that done? Because there's obviously 2 or 3 multiple images combined into one. It's not a true-to-life photograph, if you will. And you sort of have to wonder, how was that done? And, you know, it's just a matter of shooting things separately. You sort of have a layout in your mind, knowing where they're going to appear on the page, and you shoot for a specific use that way, and then you combine them later. First of all, of course, you have to have an idea. You do a little thumbnail sketch of, you know, I want to do this, I want to have some trees over here, or whatever. I want to have a girl here, I want to have a shell here. I want to do this fantasy conch shell island, you know, just some ideas that you just artistically feel like, gee, that would be really weird, let's try that, you know. And so then you have to figure out, once you position all these things, well, should the girl be in front of the buildings, or should the girl be behind the buildings, or should the shell be the size of the entire horizon, or should it just be a little tiny little thing, you know, off in the distance? Or these are all things you play with. You just sort of decide what works best for you, and then you go out and physically start planning to shoot those images. Sunrise is always a beautiful time, no matter where you are, I feel, but especially in South Florida. You have that nice, crisp sun coming up over the horizon, and regardless of the temperatures, sometimes it's a little chilly in January, but we positioned the girl that we knew that where her legs had to angle at a certain angle to fit the contour, getting back to shapes, of the skyline. And we had the girl's body then angled to a certain way, using just cropping at her cropping at her lips, excuse me, so that we knew exactly how the shape would fit. And so it was a kind of a difficult and very uncomfortable position for the model to be in, but photographically it was exactly what I wanted. Just pretend like you're enjoying the hell out of this.
When the sun is your main light and you're shooting at sunrise, there's no time for discussion, because before you know it, your light has changed not only in position but also in intensity. King knew he had only a limited amount of time to get the shot, and he also knew that his exposure was constantly changing.
What's your reading? We needed just a very basic picture of a conch shell. Knowing myself, I did not spend a lot of time with that, because I knew it would be used very, very small in my image, versus the girl would be used all the way across the bottom of the frame. I knew that the conch shell would be used very minutely, and almost a silhouette shape in the background as an island. So we just basically set the shell in the sand, photographed it, and then later just sort of did a little detail work with shadowing, made it look like it was actually submerged in the water. You want that water to cover just the bottom of that shell, right about there. A bit more.
If the conch was King's fantasy island, then surely he needed some palm trees to plant on it. That was his next shot.
Very tropical. All right, that should do it.
The next shot took King high above Miami, but again he had to deal with Mother Nature. Shooting the skyline backlit proved to be unsatisfactory, so King went up at various times of the day in search of the ideal lighting. After several flights, he found what he was looking for late in the afternoon.
Although I shot it front lit, and all the other images in my picture are backlit, it still had that, because the whole poster is a fantasy, it had a lot more life to it to have light on the buildings the way I had them, even though the shadows and, you know, the cardinal rule, well, how can that be? This is front lit and everything else is backlit. I mean, you know, there are no rules when it comes to fantasies like this. Okay, the final image that I was looking for to fit with the girl and the skyline and the trees and the palm was something, a nice sky picture with maybe some birds, and I went through my Florida files and found this really nice shot of some golden winged, you know, sky, and it was just really pretty. So I fit that in with the water, and it just really seemed to pull the whole thing together. For the 5 photographs that
Armed with the transparencies from the shoot, King's next step was to get the visual information into the Sitex machine. The first step in this process consists of scanning the transparencies with a laser. By taking what is essentially analog information and transforming it with the laser into digital electronic signals which can be read by a computer, the Sitex can resize, rearrange, colorize, posterize, and manipulate any image without any degradation in image quality. In some ways, the process parallels the differences between traditional audio recording techniques and digital CD recordings. Next, the digital information is input into the Sitex in preparation for the creation of King's fantasy. After the images have been sized and given positions on the screen, the computer assigns a color to each in order to check the final positioning. Each image is then revealed in turn in a full-color approximation of what the final picture will look like. Of course, the photographer has the option to make changes at any point in the process, and with the touch of a few controls, the Sitex operator can adjust any part of the picture.
Well, I'm sure that there are the purists out there that say, well, that's not, you know, that's not a photograph. That's, you know, that's not photography. Well, I tend to agree with the fact that it's certainly not purism, but it's certainly a good step in the right direction towards expressionism. If a photographer can express himself the way he wants to, and if it takes a little bit of electronic machinery to do that, I think that's, I don't think that's cheating at all. I think it's just one more tool that the photographer now has in his little gadget bag.